Hello everyone. I'm going to talk about video directing. And hopefully we'll all learn a little something along the way. I'm Calvin Romaine, North Langley video director. Welcome to my masterclass. No, it's not a masterclass and I'm definitely not an expert, but I'm going to break down here what we did this Sunday for Livestream Sunday. So I think the first thing I would mention is I prefer, and this is just my opinion, but I prefer the hard cut. I think the dissolve 99% of the time, I think the dissolve is just kind of cheesy and I think it's antiquated. I think it's just outdated. I don't think it's necessary, really. There's a couple times I think in here where I use it, and I use it sparingly. And I think if you're just intentional about why you're choosing to dissolve, then it's fine. But I think just using it on every cut, it's just kind of tacky in my opinion. I would encourage you all just to use the hard cut. I think it's better, but to each his own. The other thing is I'm trying to encourage the camera operators to move the camera more, whether that be like zooming or tilting or panning. Here we've got like a nice little pan left to right. It's about like revealing information. I think like you start on Sid playing the guitar and then you tilt up to him, right? You're revealing information. You're showing the guitar and then you're moving up. Because that's what this is, right? We're telling a story, right? It's a song, it's worship, but we're also telling a story, and it's about focusing on the characters and the scenes that are important, and hiding the rest, and revealing information as you go. I know that sounds kind of like a pretentious way to say it, but that's the best way I can think of to explain it. I would encourage you also, like as a director, to really be vocal with the camera operators, especially before and while you're doing the rehearsal, to talk about the kinds of shots that you like, what looks good. I always try to run through the whole set with the operators as if we're live, and try to pick the angles that look good. Like we even practice some stuff like this, right? We have like a little tilt up from the guitar, and to kind of just run through and pretend you're live and practice. And then I'll stop it too, right? Like as we're going, you have a chance to stop during the rehearsal. So I'll stop and be like, oh, actually, you know what? So Tamea, when you frame up for James here, can you make sure you give him a little bit more headroom, because we're cutting off his head a little bit too much. Other things I noticed too is sometimes with the way the stage is set up, especially with the social distancing, we have people like spaced out, and I try to always avoid having like a gigantic person on the small stage behind and then a small person, like so Leanne's sitting at the keyboard. I would avoid having like Sid towering above her, because then you have a head up here at the top of the frame and you have a head down here at the bottom of the frame, and there's no focal point. Here's nice, right? We have two people to look at. They're both kind of at the same level of importance. So going through, I think, is really important to go through. It's almost like you're storyboarding, right? It's almost like you're writing a storyboard in your head of like the kinds of shots you like, and you're planning it with the camera operators and choosing the shots, and kind of running it through like a rehearsal. And then you kind of have this list in your head of like different shots, and always looking for the next shot, right? Like thinking about what's important right now. Look at Sid just jamming out on that guitar, and then I'm already thinking, what's the next shot? I hear tambourine. Let's go there. And so much of this though is the operators. Like, so Tamea was on the floor camera 6, and then Niall was on camera 2, and they were both just solid, like so on point, so tight. Like I'd cut from them and go to another camera, and like in a second they'd already be framed up for something else, which makes my job so much easier when you're directing. Being able to just rely on your team and rely on the other people working with you goes so long. It goes so far. So props to you guys. It was really good. So that's kind of weird to me, right? Like I would have probably, if I had a chance to do take 2, I would have said like, we don't want to have Sid way above Leanne like that, because then you have the middle of the frame is just dead space, right? There's nothing to look at. Another thing is just like, don't be afraid to like settle in. Like we don't need to always be rushing to cut. Like this is a slow song. We're starting off slow. Let's just settle in. The fast cuts can be really nice for a faster song. But just don't be afraid to sit on a wide shot for a little while. At the same time, though, like it's not always about the person who's, right? It's not always about, oh, Tiana's singing, but it's looking for other moments too, right? Like looking for what other musicians are doing. Like Debbie there, right? She's just like enjoying the music. So I cut to her, and then we're back to Tiana. Like I said, right? It's about telling a story. When you watch a movie, the camera's not just on the person who's talking. It's about the people who are listening. And that's what they say in acting is that half of acting is listening as well, right? And listening to the other musicians and enjoying it. So for zooms like that, normally I would try to cut after the action starts and cut before the action ends, as opposed to letting it stop. So you could see that she zoomed in and then she ran out of lens, so she stopped. And I should have probably either cut out before that or had her ease out better. And if you're on camera 6, the one on the floor, I suggest you use the manual lens, like zooming on the lens physically instead of using the servo zoom, because the servo zoom is really linear. And if you go on the lens, you have to unlock it to manual, and you just zoom on the lens, then you can ease in and ease out really smoothly. But if not, or if you're using the other camera 2, if you're cutting as a director, just try to cut just before the lens, just before we run out of space, because then you're kind of moving it forward instead of like having this jarring stop, right? Here I probably, see there, I should have cut, or I should have asked her to kind of ease out a little bit. I try to also give the operators like a list of hero shots. Like for camera 6, I preferred it for the vocalists. I liked like the 3/4 angle, so we went through all the shots, every single musician, line them up, kind of pick what we like, and we always find certain things that work better with one specific camera, and that's usually just 2 and 6, the two that are operated. And then I almost always set up camera 1 and camera 3 static lock off, just backup shots, like safety shots, and I'll just cut to those when I want to see the whole band, or if I need to buy time while someone's reframing. And I almost never change them. I leave them at the beginning of the service, and I set them at that, and I just leave them. And musicians, like if you look at Tiana and Debbie here, if you move, if you have lots of like great stage presence, like we're gonna cut to you. So I always like Dominique is always like singing along as she's drumming, and I'm always gonna cut to that. So good stage presence, lots of movement, be dynamic, and you'll be on TV. If you're a camera operator and you're more comfortable with the lock offs, like I would just experiment or do it during rehearsal. Try to like introduce a little bit of movement. I was trying to always like push them forward. Like this week in particular, I try to really push people forward with just being a little bit looser on the camera. I know it can be really hard, really jittery with the tripod, but if you can really like use your upper body strength to hold your body straight so that your breath doesn't shake, and just really smooth with the hands, like you can get some like nice smooth little movements, and just little reframes or like little zooms and stuff. So here's this. The song is slow. We're not moving too fast. We're doing longer cuts. Establish the space with a wide shot. A lot of times I'm calling out these shots, but the majority of the time it was just the camera operators finding what was important, and that's so important. I think when you're on camera, is thinking about what's the next shot. What is the director most likely going to want to do right now? If camera 2's on, if I just heard camera 2 go to Tiana, I know that I shouldn't go to Tiana because we're going to have a jump cut. I should go somewhere else, right? So listening to what's happening, thinking about what's going to happen next, because it's not just about this shot, right? It's always about the next shot. You should always be thinking about what's happening next, both as a director and an operator. So this Sunday was a really good example of just two camera ops who were just so good at always kind of predicting what I was going to call for next, and I didn't have to do too much calling on this one. It was always just switching to whatever they had next, and for a lot of it they just nailed it. And I think that's maybe the number one advice for video operators is like, don't double up. Because we don't want to be crossing the axis and cutting, don't want to cut from Tiana here and then cut to camera 6 on the floor on Tiana again. Even if the framing is a little bit different, if it's close enough, it's going to read like a jump cut, and it's going to read like you just crossed the axis, right? The center of the stage, we have both cameras on either side, right? If you draw a center down the stage, we have 2 cameras on either side, so you're crossing the axis every time you cut, which is fine, but you don't want to be doing that on the same subject, right? You don't want to be crossing Debbie's right side to her left side, or Tiana here, right? So when you're on the floor, just try not to double up. Look at what's live right now, what's broadcasting, and think of what's going to happen next. What do I need to be? Where's the best bet for me that I'm going to get cut to, instead of having to always rely on the director to tell you what to go to, or just guessing randomly, but trying to really be informed and really like plugged in. It's a nice little pan across the stage. We're describing the space, right? We're showing the space. And then there, as you see there, I did a dissolve. And that was like a case of trying to kind of merge the 2 shots together. Like I knew we had a dissolve that was going to need to smoothly transition to something else. And I didn't want to be like a moving shot and then just a jarring stop to a lock off. So that's why I did a dissolve. But for all of these, I think it just looks better with cuts. Because you don't notice it, right? You're not aware of the fact that it's cutting. Whereas whenever you have a dissolve, you immediately know, oh, look, they're cutting, and you're almost like you're counting the cuts. Another thing that's cool, it's handy, is that we have the click in our ears, right, for the track. So I try to sometimes think of it as you're one of the musicians as well, and I'm almost like kind of counting almost sometimes, and trying to cut with the music. And it also gives you a clue, like how like, okay, this is probably like 1 or 2 bars, and then cutting, especially if it's like a musical, like a breakdown, or like just like a instrumental part. You can get a good sense of the timing and how long it's going to go on based on the click. And sometimes it'll even tell you how many bars, or it'll tell you like, it'll be like verse 1 and 2 and you're like, okay, I'm ready to go. So overall, I think the big takeaway is like, this is what I would suggest. I'm like by no means an expert, but I like the hard cuts. I like lots of movement if we can. I think it's only as far as the camera operators are comfortable. If they're whatever they're comfortable doing, just push them a little bit outside. I encourage people to experiment and go outside their comfort zone, trying to add more movement to the shots. And then just being really intentional about where you're cutting, when you're cutting, why you're cutting, and remembering that we're storytellers, right? The song is telling a story. You can tell a story within the song, highlighting the important instrument, the important moments, and yeah, I think that's it.